Now, the management of Dangote Refinery and Petrochemical Company has again stated the company's resolve to abide by all global best practices as a way of exploring for quick and effective solution to the ongoing crisis around distribution of petroleum products across Nigeria. In a statement issued to this effect, Dangote Refinery outlined that its management or movement to intervene in this ecosystem through the CNG-powered trucks initiative was only born out of a genuine desire to support national energy transition plans. It also expressed a readiness to provide enabling atmosphere for membership of industry unions within the organization in accordance to the individual preferences of its workforce. For a conversation around all of that, we're now being joined by Kevin Emmanuel, an economist and policy advisor. Good morning, Kevin, and thank you for joining us on the morning show.
Good morning, Oji. It's always a privilege to be here. Good morning, Adeshwa.
Good morning.
Fantastic. Now, I have highlighted Dangote's stance and the statement that they released yesterday, and I think that was also in response to DAPPMAN's statement. And I'd like to highlight some of the issues that DAPPMAN had raised in its statement. DAPPMAN is alleging that, the free delivery offer from the Dangote Refinery is misleading, as it requires marketers to use Dangote-owned trucks at commercial rates. Now, DAPPMAN is saying that, this arrangement imposes additional logistical and financial burdens on marketers and limits, operational flexibility, as they claim. Now, from an economic standpoint, if this assertion is true, can you help us understand how using Dangote-owned trucks will increase costs for marketers, and what the impact, what sort of impact will it be on their operational flexibility and, of course, profit margins? And how, if the Dangote is saying that they are providing free trucks, how does that affect the consumers, and do the consumers profit as well?
Oji, very important question that you've asked. The statement that DAPPMAN made is factually incorrect, because there is a principle of open access and not closed loop at the Dangote Refinery gantry. Open access means that the gantry is open for one and all to come and load products, as far as you meet with the standards that has been set, and you pay for products like the template has been set. So the statement DAPPMAN made about it saying that Dangote requires them to use these trucks to take product as commercial rates that are prohibitive and above normal rates is factually incorrect, because there is open access. The NUPENG union, truck owners and their members are free to go to the gantry and load products, and take to whatever part of Nigeria they want to take. Look, Oji, it costs about 2 million naira or a little above to truck products from any depot in Lagos to, say, Abuja, for example. That's how much it costs, just the cost of trucking. They have all kinds of levies and charges. They have e-collop levy that the government requires for trucks, to ensure that there is proper sanity and management of trucks. In Lagos, for example, you have the cost of loading each truck that the union charges its members. You have all kinds of charges on the road, that unofficial charges and taxes, which is one of the issues, for example, that the new tax reform seeks to address on nuisance taxes and levies on the expressway, for example. Dangote says by this initiative, bringing in the first phase 4,000 trucks, and then over time scaling into 10,000 trucks, and you're going to have 6 workers per truck, which will create 60,000 jobs. 60,000 jobs, Oji. That what he intends to do is distribute products to the nook and cranny of Nigeria and absorb retail filling station owners of the risk and the costs of distributing products. It costs 3.5 to 4 million naira, about that range, to truck maybe a 33,000 litre tank of fuel to Maiduguri from Lagos. Dangote is saying that you don't need to go through all of that. All you have to do is apply for products, make a deposit, And in fact, he's even created a credit system in this time when we have interest rates, prime lending rates is between 32 and 35%, and interest rates because of the inflation is prohibitive for businesses, for up to 500,000 liters for businesses that meet up, to be able to borrow products and trade, you know. So I don't see the truths in the assertion they made that he's trying to monopolize the sector in any way, because based on sections 234, subsections 2 of the PIA, Dangote is only playing in the midstream. Subsections 2 of 234 of the PIA says that unless you have an integrated special project, specific project, yeah, you're not allowed to operate as a legal entity in both the up, mid, and downstream. Dangote is only playing in the midstream sector. MRS is not Dangote. MRS belongs to Seyi Dantata, who happens to be a family member, who plays in the downstream sector. MRS is not Dangote. Dangote is not a shareholder in MRS. So the allegations and the talk that, oh, he's playing in the midstream and downstream sector and this is monopoly is totally and absolutely incorrect. So the statement that's credited to DAPPMAN is factually incorrect and does not have any merit or validity whatsoever.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, you know, some people would argue that that close family relationship between MRS and Dangote is definitely beneficial for them. So maybe not a monopoly, but an oligarchy. But let's also move on to other issues at hand now. With Dangote entering this system, as you said, he's going to possibly bring 60,000 jobs, and he's offering to truck these petrol for free, which would usually cost maybe 2 million or 3 million, according to you. Why would he take on such a costing paying salary of 60,000 people and trucking for free? Why would he take on so much of a cost to himself?
This is why you've asked a very important question. I'll tell you this. So there are dump sites. Dump sites are typically like small tank farms where products are stored, you know, when they are moved from major depots in Lagos. There are dump sites around Nigeria where naphtha is the base compound you get that is used for refining into higher distillates like PMS. There are dump sites in Nigeria today where naphtha is mixed with PMS against the regulatory standards, right, to boost margins at the expense of Nigerians. Okay? Dangote, you know, being like the 7th largest refinery in the world and now being the first major commercial refinery, private sector refinery in Nigeria, has brought a new standard to the industry. And you see, Adeshwa, look, the recent increase of Nigeria's GDP from 188 billion to 253 billion, MDS says, can be credited to the improvements we've made with processing and refining our crude instead of selling crude. You know, even if Dangote is still importing 10 million barrels of crude oil per month into Nigeria. Now, to answer your question, right, look, you have a situation where the cabal that controls the oil sector in Nigeria, you've had, you know, phantom consumption number, 70 million liters. They wake up tomorrow morning, they say it's 80 million liters. They don't have any empirical framework or evidence to show that Nigeria is actually consuming that volume. Was doing what they call direct sale, direct purchase, like FOB exports, and then imports delivered at place into Nigeria. You swap Nigeria's crude oil through the domestic crude intervention stock for bringing in refined petroleum products in Nigeria with no lab that the regulator has to test the quality of the product brought into Nigeria to meet up with the regulatory standards. And you had arbitrage opportunities created by traders that were making hundreds of billions of naira on a monthly basis. Dangote says, look, let us do the real business of refining and distributing to the downstream. Let's get crude, let's refine. He's supplying LPG to the markets in Nigeria because he's importing heavy crude and he's getting butane. Nigeria consumes more butane than propane. He's supplying petrochemicals like polypropylene and polyethylene crystals. For the first time, Nigeria is not importing PPL, PVC, and PEL. Nigeria is actually exporting it and supplying the domestic markets. He's exporting residual fuel oils, and in the future, if he gets a vacuum distillation unit, he's going to start processing RFOs into base oil that is used for lubricants. He's exporting AGO. He's exporting Jet A1. Dangote is currently the single largest exporter of Jet A1 to the UK as we speak, right? So from being a net importer, he's now exporting. Now he's saying that let's do the real business of refining and supplying the market with transportation fuels. If you have a filling station, take products and supply the markets. Now, he's not saying that, look, he doesn't want anybody to import products into Nigeria. But sections 317, 7 and 8 of the PIA says, if the domestic refiner, and this is what the law says, the PIA says, if the domestic refiner has shown the capacity to supply the local market with what it needs, the regulator, NMDPRA, is compelled to withdraw the import licenses of the people who are importing products into Nigeria. That's what the law says, right? So if, for example, Dangote is doing up to 44 million liters of PMS per day, the question we need to ask the regulator is, can he justify the numbers he claims Nigeria is consuming at 49.6 million liters by providing the equalization fund to back each liter that is consumed? Because for each liter that is consumed, there is equalization fund under the old subsidy regime. Now, in the new subsidy regime, there's a levy charge per liter. If there's an independent audit that is done on the regulatory books of the regulator in Nigeria, can they show that actually 49.6 million liters of PMS is being consumed? My best guess is that they cannot show, which means that Nigeria is actually consuming less than the claiming Nigeria is consuming. And if that is the case, Dangote has the capacity to supply the markets. Now, he's saying that if you have a filling station, apply, we'll deliver products to you directly. You don't have to bear the cost of transporting the products to your filling station. You don't have to bear the risk of transporting products to your filling station, right? Since Dangote started last year, there's been no talk of scarcity of petrol. There's been no talk of strike. Since August, when he started refining PMS last year, there's been no talk of scarcity. We've historically, in fact, there was a situation last year, in August last year, when there was a scarcity of product just before it started, when traders said that they were owed $6.8 billion. That is a subject for another conversation because the government needs to audit if they were actually owed $6.8 billion. And NNPC's retained earnings from lifting crude was used to draw down on those loans. Okay? Where they said refined petroleum products was on the ocean and Nigerians were suffering from scarcity. Since he started last year, there's been no situation like that. In January of 2022, Adeshua, we had a situation where petrol that was imported into Nigeria, the methanol content in the petrol that is used to increase their octane rating was above 15%. And when the petrol came into Nigeria, that petrol met what they call the anti-knocking ratio in petrochemical engineering. And people's car gasket and rubber hose actually, what mechanical engineers call corrosion. Corrosion happened. It blew their carburetors, their engines were destroyed. Thousands of people, especially in Lagos. The Federal House of Representatives set up a committee to investigate it. Nothing came out of it. Since August last year, when Dangote started delivering products to the Nigerian market, have you heard that people's car engines were damaged? Have you heard that there's been strike? Have you heard that there's been any situation that has threatened the stability and security of supply of products to the Nigerian market? The answer is no.
All right, Kevin.
So what we have with owning a commercial refinery and operating it is not just that it's a critical national asset, it's also the fact that it's created stability and security of supply to the Nigerian market. And the security agencies and the presidency should take note of this.
But Kevin, DAPPMAN is claiming that Dangote only supplies about 30 to 35% of national demand. Are you saying that the Dangote Refinery is able to supply to Nigerians at full capacity at this moment? Is that what you're saying?
Oji, there's been a coordinated and institutional attempt to undermine Dangote by ensuring that the products are not taken from him. In June and July of 2025, Dangote exported 1.3 billion liters of PMS. In June and July, in a 60-day period, he exported 1.3 billion liters of PMS. Within the last 2 weeks, for the first time, Dangote exported Petrol, premium motor spirit to the US. He exported Petrol to America for the first time within the last 2 weeks. So, Oji, does it make sense for DAPPMAN to say that he's not able to supply more than 30 to 35% of what Nigeria consumes, but he's exporting 1.3 billion liters of PMS within the month of June and July of 2025? It doesn't make sense.
All right,
so there's been an institutional conspiracy to ensure that they don't take products from him. And this fight between Dangote and NUPENG, where NUPENG is trying to compel him to unionize his workers, is the last attempt. They are a proxy for the marketers that realize that the game is over for them.
They're a proxy. You know, I'd like to just touch on this idea of free delivery and Dangote seeming to be able to, or the conversation of even the monopoly. DAPPMAN appears not to believe that Dangote Refinery is acting out of patriotism. They say that, you know, the refinery's price reductions are strategically timed to harm competitors. You know, they've made these allegations. I'd love to know what you think from an economic standpoint and the potential long-term effect of such actions, you know, on other market participants. Now, we're talking about competition here. And I'll also like you to address DAPPMAN's assertion that the refinery is offering lower prices to international buyers compared to local ones. Now, is this even possible? And if it were, how does it affect the market?
Oji, they are contradicting themselves. And the reason why I said they are contradicting themselves is because, listen, if you have a 382% increase in the price of PMS over the last 24 months because of the revaluation of the FX exchange rate and the fact that the government came to a point where it had to devalue the naira to close the black market premium and also increase the price of PMS to reduce the under-recovery the government was paying on subsidy, which together were taking about 10 trillion naira a year to prevent the government from declaring bankruptcy, because that was the decision that Tinubu was faced with when he became president in 2023. That was the reason why he announced at his inauguration that subsidy is gone. You know, he had that option to make, and he made the right call, in my opinion, right? Shouldn't the decrease in the price of PMS by a player in the sector be a good thing? Shouldn't Nigerians rejoice that Dangote is reducing the price of PMS? How is that not patriotism? He's invested $20 billion to build a refinery in Nigeria over the last 8 to 10 years, right? For 30 years, we've been importing products. A lot of those dirty products, the regulator does not have a lab to test the quality of products that comes into Nigeria. Over 31 companies got licenses to build refineries. In fact, in 2007, Oji, Dangote and a few other people set up a consortium, Blue Star, to buy up Port Harcourt Warri Refinery. CMPC bought over Kaduna Refinery, but that sale was reversed over issues, you know. And that sale was reversed. NUPENG was part of the union that actually opposed that sale in 2007 to the late President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, right? What is patriotism? Explain the meaning of patriotism. What is more patriotic than a company deciding that it's going to take a risk, use one of its companies as a collateral to secure loan that it needs to build a commercial refinery that happens to be the 7th largest refinery in the world today and is exporting products around the world, than that? What has the members of DAPPMAN done? Why didn't they, over this intervening period, set up a consortium to build a refinery to compete with Dangote? They didn't expect him to succeed, and he has succeeded.
Yes,
Yes,
so we're not talking about the refinery now at the moment. We're not talking about the refinery or whether it's a good thing or not. We're talking about predatory pricing, which is what the allegation is, and that in the long run, this predatory pricing will not be good for the Nigerian people. So what's your argument against that? Not the refinery, not whether or not he's exporting. Focus on the fact that these lowered prices can be predatory pricing. And by pricing competition out of the market, in the long run, Nigerians would not benefit. Please respond to that.
Adeshua, look, in sections 317.11 of the PIA, the law says that the product allowed in Nigeria, the sulfur level of the product allowed in Nigeria is 50 parts per million. Now, the quality specification of the transportation fuels, the flash point, distillation level, the density, determines the price. I need you to understand this. Petrol prices, diesel prices, right, are not the same. They are not the same because you can have diesel price where the flash point is lower than the regulatory standards, where the sulfur level is 500 ppm, when the approved sulfur level for products required within the ECOWAS region set by the government is 50 ppm. So where we should start this conversation from first is it possible to do an independent audit, a round-robin table, where you test to see if the quality of the products that is imported into Nigeria today, despite the fact that there's a refinery to solve the domestic demand, actually meets up with what the law says. That's the foundation for this conversation. That's the foundation. If we address that, then we now come. If the quality of the products imported into Nigeria, as they claim, meets up with specification, why are they not able to compete with the domestic refiner? Look, the calculation for the price of PMS is very simple. The calculation is the price per metric ton that is determined by Platts, which is anywhere between $740 to $780 per metric ton, multiplied by the exchange rates currently, which is hovering around 1,520 naira to a dollar in the black market, divided by the number of liters in 1 metric ton of PMS, which is 1,341 liters of PMS. That's how you get the price. So if, for example, crude oil price is adjusting lower and the exchange rate is strengthening, right, the refiner has an obligation to adjust to market realities and reduce the price of PMS. So the question is, why are the people who are importing products not able to compete with the standard template for pricing that is provided by the market? Why are they not able to compete? It's a free market. It's capitalism. It's competition. The market is not regulated by the government. The government has obeyed Section 205 of the PIA and has deregulated pricing for PMS. The government doesn't set the price again. The government doesn't provide under recovery. So the question is, if it's a free market, why are the people importing not able to compete with the standard industry template that has been provided for pricing PMS around the world? Why are they not able to compete? Why are they complaining? Could it be that the refiner actually has the capacity to go on an economies of scale? Should he be punished for that? No. He shouldn't be punished for having efficiency and scale. It's business. If they're not able to compete because of freight costs, then they should think about forming a consortium and going into the business of building a refinery that will compete with Dangote. It's as simple as that. Why should Dangote be punished for efficiency and scale?
All right. So let's just talk about some of the arguments that have been held so far in terms of, trucking and all of that. We're talking about workers' rights and, the statement that Dangote released last night about, upholding workers' rights and, ensuring a peaceful work environment, saying that they respect the rights of all workers either to join or not to join their union, and they believe in the principle of volunteerism. I'd like your thoughts on these arguments that have been held so far. The Dangote or DAPPMAN is NUPENG. They're alleging that the Dangote is refusing for their drivers to join the union, and alleging this sort of monopoly for the drivers at the same time.
Oji, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for this question. I like to situate things within the law. What does the law say? In sections 43, subsections 1 of the Trade Union Act, that should be the Bible or the Quran that governs the activities of NUPENG, Pengasin, and any other federal trade union and association you have in Nigeria. It says that you cannot compel a worker to join a union if they refuse to join a union. So the question is, why is NUPENG trying to force Dangote's workers to join the union? That's the question we should ask. There's sections, Convention 87, that talks about freedom of assembly in the workplace that ILO, instituted in their window of instituting the 8 labor rights conventions that governs labor rights around the world, the way human capital, human resources is treated around the world between 1947 and 1956, right? 87 talked about freedom of assembly. 98 talks about the right to collective bargaining. Look, you have 40,000 people who currently work at the Dangote Refinery, paying personal income taxes to the Lagos state government. There's never been any complaint of people don't get their salaries. There's never been any complaint of people are not treated fairly. How come all of a sudden Dangote is decided that it's going to go into distribution to the last mile, and now we're hearing about NUPENG saying that there are people complaining in the company that their rights have been trampled on? Can they provide evidence to back it? That's the question. It's an allegation that they can't substantiate on. We should thank a commercial refiner that has taken a risk and that is going to employ 60,000 drivers outside of 40,000 people who work at the refinery and petrochemical plant currently. Dangote, over the next 5 years, will scale to 100,000 jobs just for between the refinery and petrochemical plant and the drivers who deliver to the last mile. That is jobs that are being created, right? So the question we should ask NUPENG is, why are they, so desperate to have workers that have not indicated interest to join their union? Is it because of the fees that they get from the workers? Why are they so desperate? If there are workers within the company that have indicated to join the union, like Dangote said, of course they are free to join the union. If there are workers that have said, we don't want to join your union, it's not by force.
Okay.
So why are they so desperate?
Okay, thank you. Calvin, I have a quick question.
I saw videos where they brought in trucks to block the entrance and exit to the refinery. And I think that is sabotage. Okay. Because it's a private enterprise. It's not owned by the government. The government-owned refineries, NUPENG could have tried it with that, right? The government-owned refineries, Port Harcourt is under lock and key. Warri is under lock and key. Kaduna is under after $2.9 billion that they claim they spend in turnaround maintenance that has gone down the drain with no results to show for it.
Calvin,
NMPC has no results to show for it.
Calvin,
this is a private enterprise that is guaranteeing energy security and stability to Nigerians, and it amounts to sabotage and a threat to Nigeria's national security for NUPENG to say that if workers who have not indicated interest to join their union are not going to join their union, they will block the entrance and exit into the refinery for products not to go in and come out.
Okay.
It's sabotage.
Okay.
Look, Oji, let me outline the process for even, strike.
Okay.
The Trade Union Act says that for a strike to become legal, you have to follow a process. What's the process? Number one, there has to be a 7 to 14 days notice, written notice to the Minister of Labour.
Thank you very much, Calvin Emmanuel, economist and policy analyst, for joining us this morning on The Morning Show.